I've been asked by a lot of people to give what I have for a solar generator and get it out there so everybody can duplicate it. Just so everybody knows, I did steal this idea off of YouTube and just kind of made my own modifications to it, and that's the end product that you see here. There are, I think, 4 of these in existence now that we've built, been trying out, doing a lot of ham radio with them. That was its initial purpose, was for ham radio, until we figured out that we could do a lot more with it. We can run minor things in the house with an inverter. Once you plug an inverter into it, we can run minor things, hair dryers, soldering irons, little things that you may need in an emergency. You're not going to run your AC unit with it. But smaller things, coffee pots, microwaves here and there, little things that you may need, you can do. So what we've got is, this is our solar generator without the solar panel. As you can see, it'll run on its own. This one's been without power for about a month, and it's still at 12.63 volt. So what we did inside is we took, and we've got 2 AGM batteries, which I'll turn up here and see if we can see it. So we've got 2 AGM batteries. They're 35 amp hour batteries, so it's given us a full 70 amp hour of battery. And we've got them hooked up parallel, so they're still putting out the 12 volts. So it's still a 12 volt system. So we've packed them in there nicely. The nice thing about the AGM batteries is they are a deep cycle battery by nature, and so they're a deep cycle, so you get a little bit longer run time out of them, but also at the same time, with them being AGM, they're a sealed battery, so you can lay them on the side, turn them upside down. Will take a lot of abuse. Doesn't really matter what you want to do with them. The solar controller we went with is a ProStar 30. It's made by Morningstar, and we put it in a tray that's semi-removable, so we can get it out of the way to access our batteries. The nice thing about this solar controller is you can actually turn the power off to the unit and not have any power going through the unit at some point if you need to. The other thing with it being 30 amps is ham radio and some of the other things around your house take a lot of amperage. So with this being 30 amps, you can draw a lot of amperage through this and still be all right. So we can still use the load hookup on it to where if our solar panel's putting out enough, it'll draw directly off the solar panel without overheating our solar controller. So with that, it can still charge our battery. So if we're drawing 2.5 amps in the middle of the day, our solar controller can still decide to charge the batteries and supply the power that you need without touching the batteries, so your batteries aren't draining throughout the day. So that being said, the nice thing about this solar controller, the reason we went with it, is it's one of the more high-end solar controllers that you can buy. But with there being no HF signal coming out of this solar controller, you can run your ham radios and things without having a noise feedback. So you necessarily don't have to go with this high end of a solar controller to get what you want done. But if you're going to be operating HF radio and things like that, you're definitely going to want to use a better solar controller where you don't get that feedback. So coming into the top of the box, anybody who's familiar with ham radio knows about Anderson power poles. That's what the system is based on. So then we ran with a rig runner, which once you get your power into the rig runner here, you've got a 25 amp out, a 25 amp out, a 10 amp out, and then I think it's a 5 amp out. So you've got a pretty good selection of amps out. Plus you've got 2 USB charging systems there for USB, anything from cell phones, iPods, things like that you can charge with this thing. You can see here with the orange and white coming in, that's our solar panel in from the solar panel, which charges the system. All the red and blacks out are primary power outs. These two run directly off the solar controller. This one runs directly out of the battery pack. So it's running direct off the battery. So if you want to bypass your solar controller, you can do that. If you are getting some kind of feedback or you want to do a cheaper solar controller, you can do that with this system also. That pretty much rounds out the box. The box is a utility dry box, and it's made by Sportsman. Let me see, this one's got the tag on it. It's a Sportsman's Utility Dry Box. MTM makes the box. Amazon, Sportsman's Warehouse. You can get the box pretty much anywhere. The additional reason we went with this box is because you can see all the lip turned down. So if it's out in the rain and it's sealed, the water won't get into it. And then on this lower lid, it's also got the drip edge, but it's also got a gasket all the way around it. Makes it very nice for storing, or if you're taking it with you somewhere and you don't want it in the cab of the truck necessarily, that you can still, wow, stiff. That you can still keep it dry and not have to worry about your batteries getting wet or anything else in there, lights, inverter, anything you may have packed away in the box. My personal box, you can see there's a lot of extra room down in here. So in my personal box, I keep a couple antennas, roll-up dipole antennas. I keep a couple lights. You can keep quite a bit of things in there to whatever you want. You can see we got direct off the battery port here that's coming off directly off the battery. So if we want to bypass the solar controller completely, we can. With, again, Anderson power plugs and 10 gauge wire. Then you can see we're coming out of the solar controller. So the solar to charge the solar coming in, then you can see the down to the batteries going direct to the battery, and then you've got your load out that comes back around and feeds just load if you want it to the system. That's pretty much the system. So now we're going to show you how to build it. So we're going to stop here and take a little break real quick, but that's basically the system in a nutshell. And you can see that to get power, you don't have to get into the box all the way at all. So if you want just some quick power, you can plug right into the top there. Anything that's 12 volt, any kind of ham radios with chargers, anything that is 12 volt, you can do out of this box and do it for quite a while. Ham radios, we ran to 4 days on this, and 72 hours of actual talk. 40, you can go a little bit longer than that. You can go full 4 days. If you're going to run just listening in a ham radio. So it's a really good box. And we've got them down to smaller now. We've got some that are 28 amp hours. We built this one first to see what we could get away with. And what was amazing we found is what we could actually do with this was way more than we actually wanted to. So we started necking our boxes down, but this seems to be our biggest and best one that we've built so far, and everybody seems to really like. Show you, this is what's going to go into the box minus the soldering iron here. This is what it's going to take to actually build this box minus the solar panel. So a lot of stuff comes from PowerWorks. You can see we got a couple of chassis mounts, the Anderson power poles, the ProStar 30, Morningstar, the actual fuse circuits that we're going to use off the batteries to get power to our rig runner that are going to come up through the chassis mounts. The wire, the big thing on the wire, guys, don't skimp. You can spend a lot less money on a lot less wire, but remember, you get what you pay for. And this stuff's about, for 100 feet of the 12 gauge, I think is about $70. And for 25 feet of the 10 gauge, I want to say it's about $35. The wires are going to be one of your number one items along with the batteries that set you back on price. But like I say, don't skimp on the wires. Skimp on your solar controller, knowing that you're going to have some sound issues. If you're running ham radio, skimp back on maybe your rig runner. You don't got to get one with the USBs. You can go do another way with USBs that I'll show you. Don't skimp on your batteries, but I mean, you can go with a smaller battery. There's some things you can do, but don't skimp on your wire because you're really going to be sorry, because this really is the heart of the system, and you will burn up wire once you start pulling a lot of amps through it. Some kind of meter is nice. It's not a necessity, but it's nice to know. A lot of times we won't even use these to see what the box is actually doing. We'll use it to see what the solar panel is actually putting out into the box. So I'll show you that later on of how we rig it up to show what the solar panel is doing. Because if I can tell what my solar panel is doing, I can tell a lot more about what I can run off of it during the day without touching my batteries for night for amateur radio use. So that's that, and we'll start back up here in a minute. We're going to get some stuff laid out, and we'll be right back. first thing we're going to do is we're going to start off a little bit different than I normally start off, but we got a guy running in the store we found something we were short on. So the first thing we're going to do is mount the rig runner. So we're going to take this rig runner, and you can see it fits really nicely in the top of this box. So we're not going to put it center because we know we're going to cut our chassis mounts into here. So we're going to slightly offset it. We got room for our chassis mounts, but also we got room for a gauge over here if we want to later on. So we're going to go ahead and mount this really quick. We'll be right back and show you what it looks like mounted. Went ahead and got our rig runner mounted, and we just use regular silk taffet screws. And on the back side, because they're always too long, we just nipped them off flush and cut them out of there. So simple, makes it really easy. So that's mounted. So now we're going to go ahead and drop down and do our solar controller next. Okay, so there we are. There's our actual solar controller in the box. So now, the next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to run our wire. And with running our wire, we'll run 3 wires off of here, off the solar controller. One's for the solar, one will be for the actual batteries, and then one will be for the energy out of the solar controller to whatever you're running. Talked about this wire already, how expensive it is. So the big thing with the wire being expensive is you'd rather trim and have extra than rather have too little, and you lose that much wire. So I always trim a little bit big. So we'll show you once we get it all trimmed out, and we come back, we'll have all this wired in and have all the wires down in the bottom of the box. What we've done now is we've mounted our solar controller, our Morningstar. We've turned our wires to where we're positive to positive, positive to positive, positive to positive. You want to make sure you spin your wires and get them going in the right direction and not trying to twist them after they're in. Because like anything, you don't want to put too big of a kink in your wire. You're going to be pulling some amperage through it, so you want to keep it as smooth as you can. So what we're going to do now that we've got our holes drilled, got our wire pulled, got our box in, we're going to unmount our box, our solar controller box, and we're going to pull that out, plug in our wires, tighten down, and we'll be right back to show you what the finished product looks like for that. All right, so we've got our solar controller put in our box. We've got it mounted in there, got all of our wires hardwired in there, and whenever you get up here, you can see that we've got all the positives to positives. Pretty simple, straightforward stuff. But we've drilled our holes, got all our wires mounted. You can see we left plenty of extra wire for when we get them tied into the batteries, that we can remove this to access our batteries once we get our batteries installed. So we're pretty much set there. Solar controller's in. Recap, rig runner's in. So now we're going to go ahead and start with wiring up our batteries and start putting some ends on these things and getting this stuff wrapped up, ready to go. Actually, we'll probably cut in our chassis mounts. Little guy. So we've got our hole cut. Now we're just going to make sure we cut a little bit more, but one thing I want to tell you guys, it's always better to cut too little than too much, because once you cut too much, you can cut it 2 or 3 times and it'll still be too big. So you don't want to cut too much right out of the chute. So we'll trim it up just a little bit more. And that's just about going to do it right there. So we'll come up to the top side. Now then, whenever we get to this point, you're going to want to make sure that whenever you do this, that your Anderson power poles are going the same way, so you don't have to twist your wire. And you can see that'll just pop right in there. There. And so if you're a little bit off with your hole, it really doesn't matter, because the leads will keep it on and keep it in the box good and tight, so you're good to go. So there it is. So there we go. So our chassis mounts are now in with our rig runner. So now we're going to make our connection between our solar controller and our chassis mounts, and then set the batteries, and we're going to be almost done with this project. We removed our chassis mounts, and we're going to go ahead and the Anderson power poles that we put in crimped on, we're putting them into the chassis mount. And now once we get them into the chassis mount, we'll get them where we want them. And there's two different chassis mount areas on this. You can either have the flush mount, or you can stick them out just past the flush mount. For the solar in, I always like to either stick them up past them or use different colors. This time we're just going to stick it up past for the chassis mount. So we're going to go ahead and put this chassis mount just up past a little bit, so that way we don't have any guessing whenever we want to hook this thing up in a hurry. We can get it hooked up to our solar panel and start generating power. So now you can see that we've got our chassis mount set up in there, and we left them sticking up above to where we know this is our solar in area. So we've got solar in and then solar out, and then the next one will be hot battery, so we'll put it down in the bottom. So we'll show you that here in just a second. I just wanted to show you guys how this crimper tool works, because I'm a big solder guy myself, and it is absolutely amazing how well this thing works. You just throw it right in there, run it down, and it releases, and you've got a perfect crimp. Absolutely unbelievable. Love this thing. So anybody who knows how to solder these and have soldered these before will understand how nice this is, because this is how long it literally takes to do this job now. Done. About a 1/4 inch back for the Anderson power poles. Not too far, not too little. Pretty simple. Twist your ends. Then the guy who I'm building this box for actually ordered his power poles already welded together, which is really pretty nice. I've never done it that way before. I've always believed in building my own from the very scratch, but I actually am kind of liking that, because anybody who's worked with the power poles again before understands what it is to try and get them all in the same direction all the time. All right, so we made our extra whips to put into our box. So we're going to go ahead and bind those together, and then we'll put them in our chassis mount once we get them tied together. Okay, so now we're going to drop our old ones out of our chassis mounts, take our bonded ones, put them in the chassis mount. This time we're going to do a little different. We're going to leave them low so we know which one is our direct battery power. We'll find our hole. There it is. So now then, like I was telling you earlier, the reason I choose to do it this way is I either do it this way, because now whenever you come into here and you run these down through your chassis mount, you can see how easy it is to tell which one is solar input and which one is battery output, because these are flush, these are held up, so you don't have to guess in the dark, you don't have to guess. And also, people in your group, if you do standardize like this, everybody in your group will know that every battery box is built the same, every solar controller is built the same. You can pretty much hand them off if you need to. Once you have training on it, you can have training on one person's box and have the rest in storage, and that makes it just keep it simple and keep it everybody all operating on the same keel. So that's pretty much got it. So what we'll do now is we're going to set our batteries. So we'll come back and show you the batteries actually set in the box here.
Go to hell. They're going to try to go to the IMF lunch. I can cut the audio though.
So what we're doing here is hooking our batteries up in parallel and ready to run them in the box. So we're going to be dropping them in the box next. I'm going to be off and running. Parallel is hot to hot, and negative to negative is still going to give you 12 volts. If you went positive to negative and positive to negative, then that's going to give you 24 volts, which you can do, which is fine. If you wanted to weld or something like that, that's what you would do. But with this system, we want to keep it a 12 volt system where we can do direct to our ham radios and things like that. So we're going to keep it as 12 volts, so we're going to hook them up in parallel rather than series. All right, you can see we got our batteries installed in the box. So now we're going to hook in our actual feeds to the system. There we go. Put that down behind there, like that. So we got our boxes or batteries in. Now we're going to get our support in around our batteries. Drop our box in, and we've still got one more wire to put in here, but we're going to get that done here in a minute, and then we'll show you what it's at the end. All right, so we finished up here, so let's take a look, and we'll show you it looks just like the other box. So what we've got coming in here, whoops, there we go. What we got coming in here is we've got our top, and we're all done, we're all hot. Let me see if we got our jumper, so we can show you we're hot. So we're here. And we're powered on. We're coming into here. So we're all good. We're at 12.67. We haven't charged our batteries yet, so we'll start charging them here in a little bit. Source side, so we got this plugged in wrong actually, but we can spin it around. That's not a big deal. So we're hot. We're good to go. We got battery power up top, so now our whole rig runner's powered up so we can charge cell phones, run our ham radios, whatever we want to run out of there. Coming down inside, we open it up. We've got our solar controller, our Morningstar Pro 30. Ran our wires down in through. Got a mess of wires here, it looks like, but it's not really that big of a deal. We've got our solar controller battery coming down to our batteries to charge our batteries. We got our batteries hooked up in parallel. We've got a hot coming out to one of the terminals. We got another hot coming out to the other terminal. Then we've got our solar controller coming in from our solar panel to our solar controller. And then we've got our load coming out of our solar controller. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward, guys. I mean, really easy to do, not a whole heck of a lot of work, and you really don't got to get down in this guy too much other than to service your box. This is where all your power is going to come from. So to recap, we put these up. We're going to start doing this with all of our kits. To where we got these raised up so we know in the night, middle of the night when we go to hook our solar controller up, that we're good to go. We can just feel for it. I guess in the middle of the night it's kind of a misnomer with solar panels, but if we're hooking up to where we want to run in the daytime, because most of our night ops that we're practicing are night, so we'll hook up at night, then we will be running in the day, but if you hook up at night, you still want to do it right. So we hook up there, then we're down into the box. We're coming out with hot power. We know those come directly off the battery, and then we know we got our rig runner. So that's pretty much it. That's how you do your solar, solar generator. Now all we got to do is hook up the panel, and we'll do the panel. We'll cut the ends off the panel and do the same rig runner. I mean the same Anderson power poles, and we're pretty much done, guys. I mean it weighs a little bit, but it's not overly heavy, and you've got 70 amp hours of battery there in your box, all dried, ready to go. We've got our solar panel ready to go for our solar generator. What we use is 100 watt Renogy. Here it is back here. Renogy, they're a 100 watt panel, put out 5.7 amps. Really, really good panel. Pretty bulletproof. I've been running one of these for about 2 years. I highly recommend them. They're a little bit on the expensive end, but they hold together really well. Through the militia stuff and everything else we've done, they've always been, I mean, beat on, and they still work really well, and they still generate a lot of power. So I highly recommend these, but like I say, they're not the cheapest, but nothing we ever do is. If it's worth, you know, you get what you pay for. So we've got it hooked in now. We went ahead and cut off our standard battery, our standard solar panel plugs, and went and replaced it with an Anderson power pole, because you're seeing a theme here. We really like the Anderson power pole stuff. Ran it down into our box. If we had some sunlight, and we'll do another one in the sunlight to where we can show you what the panel's putting out. But what we've done here is we're coming into our box with our solar panel. So if it was sun out, it'd be generating. What we use this little watt meter for, what's up meter for than anything else, is we put this in on our source, put this in the battery box, put this in on our source. So if we were generating any power off the sun, we'd be able to tell exactly what's going into our box. And that's mainly what we're using this for, is to tell exactly what we're getting off this solar panel, wattage and amperage wise. So that's really what we're using this for. At night, we may use it just to monitor our box off the source side into here, so then we can monitor our box and see that we don't run our batteries too low. So the what's up meter is really nice because you can use it for multiple different things. I have an older what's up meter on mine, and it doesn't have the backlit, so the backlight's pretty nice. That being said, that's about the extent of it. So if you're in prime operating conditions outside, solar panels hooked into here, what's up into here, so you can see where you're producing. Then you would have another jumper cable coming off and going into your ham radio back up on your desk or wherever you're running your ham radio. This will run everything. And like I say, it'll run a ham radio. I run an IC7000, and it will run it for probably 4 days. Mainly listening, but it'll handle some talking. If you're talking a lot, you're looking at 2.5, 3 days, no problem, still operating. But whenever you're rejuvenating every day in the sun, you're endless power for as long as you want. It's really a pretty nice system, pretty fail-proof. And the big thing is, guys, if you build it, if something goes wrong with it, you know how to fix it. So rather than going out and buying a system and spending 2 to 3 times as much money with less power, if you do it yourself and you take the time to learn how to do it, then guess what? You know how to fix it if something goes wrong with it. That's what I believe in, is I want to know how stuff works, because we're all kind of preparing for the same thing. We're always looking at the next thing that may happen or may not happen. But the fact is, if you have something that you can work on, it's going to last you a lot longer and be a lot better product for you. So that's it. That's what we've got. The next time around, when we do the next one, this is my first video ever, so I'm a little bit shaky on what I'm doing here. But the next time we do one, we'll show you our tripod stand that we use. We use a speaker stand, and then we use a satellite dish, the old Dish Network base, for the back of this thing to hold it in place on the stand. So that's all I've got, guys. I hope you enjoy the video and learn something from it, and go out and build a box, build you a solar generator. You know, a lot of people are buying generators, but the problem is generators make noise. There's no noise here, and you've got plenty of power. So something to think about.
No foods.
All right.